Good evening. Welcome to Urban Renal Talk with Tamika and Steve. I am your host, Steve Belcher. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, I'd like to ask our audience for thoughts and prayers for my partner, Tamika Moore, as she is on bed rest at this moment. So we ask for your prayers for her, the baby, and her family as well. Tonight, we got a serious topic that we want to talk about pertaining to kidney disease, and that's depression. And we know depression can affect anyone at any time. Tonight, we have with us Lamont, LaMonte Reed from Operation Strive and also from Peak Performance. How you doing, Lamonte?
Doing well, man. Glad to be here.
Good, good. So, Lamonte, you before we get into talking about depression, that's a serious topic. Um, you are a life coach, spiritual advisor, public speaker, business owner, life coach for Redefined Living, and a transplant recipient.
Yes.
I mean, have you ever experienced depression with all this you got going on and what you do? Some people might say, I wonder if Lamont ever experienced depression because they may see you on Strive and see your motivational recordings that you put out and other motivational topics. Do you experience that depression?
Yes, I have experienced it. Um, I remember just initially going on dialysis. One of the first things I decided to do was just really purpose in my heart is not to allow this thing to just really take over my life. And needless to say, uh, for the most part, it did. But yes, during the process, uh, definitely had some moments of depression. I mean, the first year, I can just recall the first year being one of the toughest years for me. And depression was there, even stress. And it was just a matter of really, you know, dealing with it, uh, identifying with it, and doing things that I, believe that would help me, feel better and fight it.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So for our audience, let me just um, read according to the American Psychiatric Association how they define depression. They say depression, major depressive disorder, is a common and serious medical illness that negatively affects how you feel, the way you think, and how you act. Depression causes feelings of sadness, and or a loss of interest in activities once enjoyed. It can lead to a variety of emotional and physical problems and can decrease a person's ability to function at work and at home. So, being with that definition, they have some symptoms. Depression symptoms can vary from mild to severe and can include feeling sad or having a depressed mood, loss of interest or pleasure, trouble sleeping, loss of energy, increased fatigue, feeling of worthless or guilty, difficulty thinking, concentrating on making decisions, and thoughts of death or suicide. Um, but the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual that house these symptoms in the ICD-9 code, says symptoms must last at least 2 weeks for a diagnosis of depression to be made. So, did you experience those symptoms for 2 weeks to actually say you were depressed, or you just experienced some of the depressed feelings?
I believe most of my feelings were depressed feelings. But I do remember, moments of exhaustion, moments of being sleepy and exhausted. So, you know, it could have lasted longer than 2 weeks, but I think most of it was just, moments of dealing with it. Because when you're on dialysis, you're exhausted. I mean, period. Sometimes it's hard to differentiate between, for me, because I was continuing to work out and I continued to work. So to differentiate between, am I exhausted because I'm working on dialysis and still doing 12-hour shifts, and then also exercising, or am I exhausted because of the feeling of depression? And so, those were the kind of how I was able to weave in and out of it, I think, at times. But I think most of the time I just felt moments of it.
Okay. Okay. Um, Let me just say for people who may be watching, uh, there's no need to be ashamed if you do suffer from depression or even talk about it. This needs to be talked about. Everyone, um, suffers from depression at some time or another. You just don't have to have a chronic disease to suffer from depression. However, a renal urology news article that I researched says that depression has a lifetime incidence of 10% in the general population, but is more common on patients with chronic kidney disease. Up to 1/3 of hemodialysis patients have depressive symptoms consistent with the diagnosis of depression. Depression among patients with chronic kidney disease has been associated with early initiation of dialysis. Depression among those already on dialysis has been associated with higher rates of hospitalization and death. Now, when you experienced your depression, Lamont, was it when you got diagnosed for kidney disease, or was it in this two-part where it says, or has been with people who already been on dialysis uh, because of hospitalization, or maybe your fear of possibly impending death?
Um, I think mine initially started when I first got on. Not so much with the news, but actually being on dialysis. This is something I never experienced. I've never been in a hospital in my entire life, any prolonged time. I've never had a surgery before, uh, prior to this, besides breaking my hand at one time. And again, coming from a background of health and fitness, having that type of strength and energy, and then going on this machine. I think the first year was probably the first was the toughest year that I experienced the depression.
Okay, okay. So let me just say, for anyone who may be going through depression right now as they're watching this, or any type of feelings of depression, we definitely recommend that you talk with or consult with your primary care physician, your nephrologist, or mental health provider. We also provided the National Suicide Hotline just in case anyone needs to talk to someone. This disease is definitely something to deal with, but as Lamont shared, uh, you can get over and beat depression. Well, it may not beat it, but keep it at bay to the point where it's not constant, or you're not depressed for longer than 2 weeks, or it's to the point where it's crippling your life. What do you think,
Yes,
Lamont?
I totally agree. I think one of the first things for me, and I always share with other, kidney warriors and dialysis warriors, is this. When I made the transition, I was, again, I purposed to continue to do what I did before. That means my lifestyle, I try to keep it the same as much as possible. And with that, I think what happened is it kept me into a routine. It kept me active. It kept me busy. And I know, unfortunately, for some people, that's not always the case. But I even, I recommend people to, get a part-time job, volunteer, because when I was working and still had my responsibilities, you know, to the business and still taking my daughter and stuff to school, there was not a whole lot of time. Often we find ourselves with a lot of time to just think about what we're going through. And so when you're actively busy, you feel better because you're not sitting there just thinking about, man, about the situation. And then secondly, just really being active, it makes you feel better for me, it made me feel better as a person, that I was still contributing, because I had 2 kids and I had a wife. And so, I was still contributing. I was still doing my part. And I know for me, and I know for other men, it could be for women, but to still be able to feel like you can provide for your family is a big thing. And it was big for me. And I think that was a key part, was that, hey, I'm still able to work. I'm still able to provide for my family. I'm not just seen as someone who can't do anything anymore. And so that helped me a lot, man.
It's funny. You still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. It, it's ironic that you mentioned about being a provider, because I was going to tell you another article by Charlie Thomas from Kidney News Online, Depression and Kidney Disease, which is the name of the article. He says that the National Kidney Foundation reports that 20% to 40% of people with kidney failure had depression, which may be related to a feeling of grief arising from a sense of loss. Now, Kubler and Ross described the stages of grief and loss as, we all know the stages of grief and loss: denial, anger,
Hmm.
bargaining, depression, acceptance. But in this article, what this gentleman says is that for many individuals, these feelings do not, as far as patients who deal with kidney disease, that their feelings do not fall into a rigidly defined stage, but are more like a spiral of emotions, which increases and decreases depending on other factors such as physical distress, social support, role conflict, like what you're talking about, loss of employment and income, and increased financial costs. So
Right.
all those things as well can cause depression, especially when loss of income.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that right, Lamont?
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. Um, for me to be able to still work and still have income coming in, uh, providing for my family, I think really helped me to still have a sense of, again, belonging, um, a sense of value. And not that, my value is wrapped up in my job, but the fact that I still can be some type of a breadwinner, I think really kept me in a better place, that I was still able to do that. And so I was very thankful by that. And then in that, to my environment, in my workplace, I had a very positive environment. And being a business owner, I was able to create that environment too. And so, I'm in a fitness field, I have my own gym. So I had a very positive environment. So when I was training people and encouraging people, I was met with smiles in the morning. I was met with appreciation. I was met with thank you. I was really met with a lot of words of encouragement by my clients. And so that in turn, makes you feel better. When you got people around you that's really supporting you in your work environment, and they're, expressing, their gratitude. And at the time, I didn't really let a lot of people know. No one really knew. My first year, not a lot of people knew that I was really on dialysis, and so
Okay.
they thought I was still, they just thought to me to be a regular guy. You know what I mean? And without having any type of chronic disease.
Okay. So look. in this article as well, they talk about self-care management. I want you to tell me if you think these are critical steps in helping with managing depression on dialysis. Critical steps. They talk about how can kidney health team help, and so the National Kidney Foundation Living Well with Kidney Failure series know how important it is for patients to be taught how to manage this new normal, they call it, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And they talk about this includes keeping track of laboratory results and working closely with their care team to set reachable goals. Critical steps in self-care management includes taking medications as prescribed and managing any side effects. Many patients will need to make dietary changes to limit sodium, potassium, phosphorus, and fluids intake. Regular physical activity will help give energy and reduce stress. Managing stress helps patients improve both physical and emotional health. Remaining connected to family and friends and continuing to be involved with enjoyable activities are important, which you mentioned. And then individuals with kidney disease should be supported to seek mental health service when needed. What do you think about that? Because it basically
Yeah.
mirrored what you just said.
Yeah, I think all the information that you're reading is a reflection of the things that I experienced and went through. So I have the support, you know, at my job. I have the support of my family, and then also, going to church. I had people around me at church that was able to support me, pray for me, and give me words of encouragement. Telling me you're going to make it through this. You're going to get through this, knowing that I had people there to support me was a tremendous way of feeling good because I knew one of my best friends I can count on him to talk to call if I needed him at any time. Of course, we would meet, have lunch, and do that on Saturdays and stuff. And so that was the support was really important, but also the thing you mentioned too was that the compliance with the medication. And so I stayed in compliance with medication, but nevertheless, there were changes. I was just sharing with someone just recently. I had so many changes of medication in my first year that
Mm.
itself could make you feel really, really down and sad. And one of the most toughest times with my medication was that my blood pressure was really high during that first year. And they were giving me all this different medication, and I was having side effects, like you said. And the side effects would make you feel a certain way. The side effects would affect you in different ways. And the worst thing that happened to me in that first year was that they gave me a clonidine patch, and that clonidine patch did not work well. And what it did was it caused me to retain fluid, and it caused me to retain fluid so bad that it swelled up in my ankles, my face, and I literally had to go to the hospital for that first year. And when I got to I couldn't even breathe that well. And the reason how I knew was because I would typically get up and I would run, and then I looked at my ankles. My ankles was kind of swelled. So I said, I'm gonna try to run anyway. And I started running, and I couldn't even complete the run. So I
Wow.
knew that something was going on because I was running pretty regularly. So I went to the hospital. They admitted me, and lo and behold, they said I was experiencing congestive heart failure
Really?
from the medication. So that was something that I had to immediately get off that clonidine patch. And really, my doctor, we had a really great relationship, and we kept changing things. And ultimately, I got that thing back to a great place and worked through, you know, my medication. And once my medication was good, it wasn't as challenging, with dealing with the high blood pressure and dealing with my feelings of feeling high blood pressure. 'Cause when they said congestive heart failure, man, you're thinking congestive heart failure, or am I going to be
Right.
out of here, or what?
Right.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, that was a challenge.
Right. So one thing that I just want to point in this article as well that we don't often hear about as part of depression and kidney disease. It not only affects patients with kidney disease, but it also can affect caregivers. And in this article, Charlie Thomas also mentions, he says, family members and caregivers are often the silent heroes for individuals with kidney disease. It is not uncommon for other family members to take over important roles that the person with CKD or chronic kidney disease can no longer perform. The roles assumed may include responsibility for employment and income issues, transportation, household tasks and activities, and caring for children or dependent adults.
Right.
Life partners may also be depressed by the changes that kidney disease bring to their intimacy as well. But before I move on to that, before what I read, do you think that caregivers and family members are the unsung heroes of this disease?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think family members, whether it be someone immediate or someone not immediate, a good close friend, definitely. And for me, it was, primarily it was my kids, and not that they were there to, give me counsel or anything like that, but that they were just there to understand dad and understand what dad is going through and just really be loving. You know what I mean? Loving to me and being able to just little things, understand that, hey, I'm exhausted today. Okay, dad, it's okay, we understand. And things like that, or even, cooking, for me. Unfortunately, I'll share this with everybody just to be transparent. My first year, I went through a divorce. I went through a divorce my first year of a kidney dialysis. And that's why I say a combination of things that was really challenging. But nevertheless, I still, again, had kids. My kids was there, and I had a lot of close friends that supported me through the situation. So that meant a lot to me.
Wow. Well, I hear you. Um, in your first marriage, and I just want to ask, did the chronic kidney disease had anything to do with it, or did your wife, or even your wife now, did the disease affect them in a way, as far as them being depressed, I guess, for you, or seeing the state and not knowing what your outcome may be?
I think when my first marriage, it was already at a point where we were already done. We
Okay.
had already made that decision prior to that. Now I had been, sick before that, as far as having chronic kidney disease, but I wasn't on dialysis then. And I think there were some tough times, but it had nothing. I don't think it had anything to do with the fact that I was on dialysis. The relationship just
Okay.
wasn't working. You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, Let me read this statement to you, and I just want you to tell me what you think about it. And it's talking about family caregivers. It says family caregivers may be reluctant to disclose how stressed they are feeling to avoid placing an additional burden on the patient with kidney disease. Um, the caregiver may even feel guilty or that they do not have a right to care for themselves and their own issues. Caregivers are at risk for depression and burnout if they neglect their own physical, mental, and social needs. By
Hmm.
you being a spiritual advisor and life coach, is do you is there some credence into that?
Yeah, yeah. I've talked to people and coached people on dialysis, and it could be overwhelming. Sometimes the caregiver can be disconnected or detached from the actual situation. I mean, I've coached people now that their husband, I mean, they didn't know much about what their wives were going through, and they just was kind of disconnected, and they didn't really get intimately involved. And I think a lot of it is because of the severity of the situation, and it made them feel a little bit. What I've learned, sometimes it makes you feel helpless as a man, and I've coached, women and men, but it makes you feel helpless when you can't really do a whole lot to help the situation. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I've
Right.
seen that, and I've experienced that in encouraging people and coaching people in situations like that. Yeah.
Wow. So let me also share with the audience. Um, a lot of people experience depression, so it's definitely nothing to be ashamed about. Uh, Part of the statistics that I researched, depression affects an estimated 1 in 15 adults. That's about 6.7% in any given year. And 1 in 6 people, 16.6%, will experience depression at some time in their life. Depression can strike at any time, but on average, first appears during the late teens to mid 20s, and women are more likely than men to experience depression. Have you noticed that in the people that you counsel, Lamont?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even apart from uh, kidney disease, like you said, you can have depression, but I think sometimes the women experience it a little bit more heavier. And I don't know exactly why. I'm not a doctor, but I understand that the emotion, the feelings part of it. Sometimes as men, we're not. Sometimes we're not in tune with our feelings, but sometimes we're not just as emotional. And not that women are all that way, but yeah, I've experienced it, and I've coached, women and men. But I noticed that the women too have a little a struggle with that sometimes a little bit more than sometimes the men.
Mm-hmm. And also, I just want to point out that depression can affect anyone. Again, even a person who appears to live in relatively ideal circumstances, excuse me, can suffer from depression as well. Uh, several factors that can play a role as well in depression. One they mentioned, Lamont, biochemistry,
Hmm.
and and they say that when people are first diagnosed, that some things that you had to look for because it may intertwine, like uremic symptoms from the kidney disease. If it built up, would that can cause some of the mental, possibly confusion or depression from the symptoms of the disease, or is it truly a mental condition from the symptoms that they may be experiencing that we talked about, and we'll go back over them.
Hmm.
But these are some of the risk factors that they talk about: biochemistry, genetics, personality, and
Hmm.
environmental factors. And when
Hmm.
they talk about biochemistry, they talk about difference in certain chemicals in the brain may contribute to symptoms of depression.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
when it comes to the genetics, it can run in the family. And far as personality wise, they mention people with low self esteem
Hmm.
and who are easily overwhelmed by stress can be a risk factor as well. Also, environmental factors, continuous exposure to violence, neglect, abuse, or poverty may make some people more vulnerable to depression.
Yeah. No,
What do you think about that?
you know, I'm a psychology major also, so it's that whole nature versus nurture thing. And I totally agree with that. I mean, like I said, my environment in the gym was a great environment. Okay, and then also, I lived in a good environment. So I think that helped me too. But yeah, if you have a predisposition to those genetics, you got to take that factor into account. If you having some financial struggles prior to that, even before going on, you got to take that into account. These are all variables that can definitely affect the way you feel. I mean, if you have a bad relationship, right, that can affect that account. So there's a lot of variables that are outside, more they say, things that happens in the environment, and then there's also the predisposition that happens, the physiological part that's in your brain, your mind. And I think we have to look at those things and really understand the big picture better, because there was a lot of different things. And for me, excuse me, for me, those were the things I had to look at with myself, and I try to create a healthy environment for myself, whether it be at the workplace or even at the home. But I think all those things, and my mother, honestly, she had struggled with depression sometime, and I've seen how it affected her, and I was able to see that, and then I don't think it affected me like that, but I see also in my sister that she gets greater bouts of that type of behavior, and she doesn't have any chronic disease or anything. So yeah.
Hmm. So let me ask you: do you think one person can experience depression more than another, or depression is depression? Because you said something that that raised the question to me: the environment you was raised, the support that you had,
Hmm.
you still had a job, and mainly the support opposed and when you started dialysis, opposed to someone who started dialysis who say lives in the food desert, they live in poverty,
Right, right.
no income,
Hmm.
they're subject to violence every day.
Hmm.
um, do you think, regardless if he's depressed and you depressed, that yours is no lesser than his?
I think people do experience it different, and I know I'm kind of dark right here because I'm in my car. I'm gonna see
Okay,
if I can move a little bit so I won't be so dark and get a little bit better and some light,
sure.
Steve. But I think that actually I had to stay close to the job, because after I um, leave right now off this, I got to go back to work. But
Okay.
I think that people who let me see if that gives me a little better light. I think people can experience it at different levels, and whether you are chronic or whether you're not chronic. So, case in point, my mom was not chronic, and she experienced depression. Okay, but she was living in a good environment, and she still had her job. Okay, and she was more depressed in her life than I've ever been. Okay, so again, if you're already in a rough situation, if you're already living in a challenging area, if the money situation, I think people do experience it differently. Some people are going to experience it more deeper, and some are not going to experience it that deeper. And it's hard to put a finger on it. I think the only way we can know is by like having these conversations. Talking to people, saying, "Hey, you know, how do you feel?" And talk about various things, relationships, work, environment, because often, without even being sick, we're trying to always better ourselves, right?
Right,
We're trying to move
absolutely.
up. We're trying to get better jobs. We're trying to move in better houses, cars. We're trying to just always better ourselves. And when we hit chronic disease, we've seen like everything kind of stops. I was doing great. I was doing good. Now the dreams and visions if I had of the future, and even talking to other people who are on dialysis, they seem to say like everything just stops.
Hmm.
Not even moving forward no more. Now I'm not even working. I'm at home. Most people I know are at home and they don't work, and so now they're living off subsidized income, right? And that becomes a challenge because now I don't have the freedom to buy the food maybe that I wanted, or I don't have the freedom to buy clothes. I can't really go anywhere. That alone can make you, feel down. So I think it's definitely levels depending on all these variables. You know what I mean?
Right. So one thing that they talk about how depression is treated they say that depression is among the most treatable of mental disorders.
Hmm.
Between 80% and 90% of people with depression eventually respond well to treatment.
Hmm.
Almost all patients gain some relief from their symptoms. So, several treatments that they talked about were medication, psychotherapy, and ECT or electroconvulsive therapy. Um, did you did you use any one of these treatments for your depression?
No, no, I didn't use anything. Uh, my best treatment for me was um, fitness. I mean, continuing to work out because we mentioned the mental part of it. I share with people all the time when you work out, it makes you feel better. Okay, working out releases endorphins in your brain, and when those endorphins are released in your brain, it makes you feel happy. It makes you feel good. So working out was one of those things that helped me a lot. Exercising. Another thing that helped me out a lot was, my spiritual life, meaning having times of prayer. And if I tell people if they don't, you feel like they have a spiritual life, meditate. Meditation has always been a part of my life. Taking that time out to meditate helped me out. Because it's related to eating. Food can be either in don't eat while they're on a machine. So those were me, exercise, the meditation.
Right, right. And just to
Sorry, with me, Steve.
piggyback on to what you said,
I think we got
Lamont. Yeah, we're still here. You froze
connection
up. We're
issue.
still here. All right, you froze up. We'll bring you back
Hello,
on.
hello,
Yeah, we're here. Okay.
hello.
Yeah, we're still here, Lamont. So while we
I'm still
get
here. Can't hear you.
so while we get Lamont back, as he was saying about exercise and treating depression, as I said in the beginning of the show, if you are experiencing any of the symptoms, please see your healthcare provider or your mental health provider or PCP. We got Lamont back. Let me bring him in. Hey, Lamont, you there, Lamont? Lamont. Okay, so this is live. So he's all the way in Los Angeles, California. The connection is bad. So we're going to carry on the conversation about depression. Um, Let me see. I got him back one more time. Let me see if I can bring him up. All right, Lamont, you there?
Yeah, I'm here, man.
All right, here we go. Thanks. We back with LaMonte Reed. Thanks, Lamont.
Yep.
Getting back. I know the connection is a little bad where you're at, but we definitely appreciate you finding the connection and coming back on. But what I was going to piggyback on what you talked about and how you manage your depression. In this article, it talks about patients should be encouraged to adopt a healthy lifestyle by increasing exercise, reducing stress, and avoiding drugs and alcohol.
Hmm.
The drug clearance of patients with CKD and the efficiency of antidepressant merit special consideration, such as if they were taking medication or therapy for their depression. And I'm sure some people are using some form of medicinal therapy um, for their depression because it's a lot out there. And that's another industry in itself, the pharmaceutical and how they treat mental health disorders.
Right, right.
Um,
Yeah.
so you didn't use any medicinal therapy to treat your depression.
No, no, I didn't use anything. Yeah, I
Were
just
you
basically,
offered any medicinal therapy in the
no,
beginning?
no, never was offered anything.
So you never seek treatment
No,
with a mental
nothing.
health specialist?
No type of mental health specialist, or I never went and sat down with anybody concerning dialysis like a professional. Are you still with me?
Yeah, I'm here.
I think I think the connection is going out again.
We're here. Hey, Lamont. Okay, so we lost him again. So, um, June Kaufman, how you doing out there, June? Thanks for supporting us. June asks, "What about spirituality?" June, I agree. That is definitely important. Very important. We're gonna bring Lamont back. Yes, Aaron, that is important. All right, we got you back, Lamont.
Yeah. So yeah, I wasn't offered anything. Um,
Okay.
but what I did do is the things I mentioned that I did. Uh, but I had a lot of people that I talked to, and that was
Uh-huh.
for me, that was like medication. For me, the people I talked to, friends and family. I had a supportive pastor and things like that, and I have
Mm-hmm.
just close relationships. And I think those close relationships that I had with people really was my type of coaching and counseling. Because I
Lamont,
wasn't, yeah.
June Kaufman asks, "What about spirituality? Did that help you?"
Oh man, tremendously, tremendously. Like I mentioned earlier, praying, studying the scriptures, reading Proverbs, really grabbing hold of my faith. And I
Mm-hmm.
tell people, who have that spiritual life that, your faith is really tested. And so those were the cornerstones of really believing, faith in God, faith in the transition, that this wasn't just something that was happening to me for no reason. You know, um, I didn't have there was no I didn't have genetic trait for dialysis, honestly. So there was nobody in
Mm-hmm.
my family. I never had high blood pressure. I was never sick. It just something just happened. Mainly, a virus attacked my kidneys. And
Wow.
and
I've
that's what.
heard of that. I've
Yeah.
heard of that as well.
So I wasn't living an unhealthy life. I was living a healthy life. And so yeah, the spirituality, the praying constantly, the constantly reading the daily devotions, uh, the constant, going to church and things like that. Tremendous part. So yeah, that's a big part of my life. That's why, y'all always see my hat, because that's where I try to keep my head at, and,
Right,
and, and
right.
always be positive, So definitely.
So, how about nature? Being out in California, I know it's a lot of wilderness out there. Erin Weller, she's down in St. Charles, Maryland.
Hmm.
She says nature really helps her. She shows videos her being right there on the beach. Um, does nature help you as well?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm out here in sunny Southern California right now, and it's about 6:50 p.m. The weather is nice. I'm at a Starbucks hanging out. I got a short sleeve shirt. In California, the weather is nice all the time, man. So, that
Oh
alone,
man, I'm jealous.
I can go to the beach anytime I want to. I can go up to the mountains. Often my hikes are in beautiful areas where you get to see nature. So again, that's that environmental part again. And in California, you can go beach, you can go to the desert, you can go to the mountains, you can go to the snow, and I'm in less than an hour or so proximity. You can go out of those places, man. So
Uh
yeah,
huh.
environment means a lot. When I went to Portland, I had my transplant, but even in the Portland people in over here on the West Coast and even Washington State, it's a very depressed state because it rains about 9 months out of the year. So when you're living in a place that possibly rains a lot, it's gloomy a lot, it's cold all the time, that's going to affect your mental well-being. And I believe that
Right.
totally. Yeah.
So let me ask, for someone who's watching right now and maybe they're a caregiver, family member that that's taking care of someone on dialysis, or their loved one may have kidney disease,
Hmm.
and they may be experiencing some of these symptoms that we talked about. And let me just go back over the symptoms: feeling sad or having depressed mood, loss of interest or pleasure in activities once enjoyed, change in appetite, weight loss unrelated to dieting, trouble sleeping, sleeping too much, loss of energy, increased fatigue, increased or purposeless physical activity, slow movements and speech, feeling worthless or guilty, difficulty thinking, thoughts of death or suicide, because that's why we had the suicide hotline up. For someone who may have one of these symptoms or feeling this way, whether they on dialysis or a caregiver, what I mean, just words of encouragement from your point of view and what you experienced, and just as a spiritual advisor, what could you tell them, or words of hope could you give them?
I would really, you know, give them words of hope, and that saying that, I'm an example, there's others examples, and there's ways that we can feel better. And one of the things for me is transparency. you know Anyone needs to be transparent, meaning that talk to someone, share your heart with someone, get it out in the open, because when everything is all bottled up inside, you don't feel any better. You don't feel any relief. So be able to be transparent about your thoughts, your feelings, that alone, and even with prayer. When I pray specifically. Specifically the way I feel, specifically what I'm going through, and that's an outlet. That becomes an outlet. Okay. Secondly, with that being an outlet, if you feel like you don't have much energy, go out for a walk, to go out for a walk and just don't don't try not to worry about what you're currently going through. And when you go for a walk, try to engage people. When I'm out and about, I always try to engage people, and it doesn't have to be something that's very dynamic. It's just simply with a smile, hey, how you doing, and you can spark up a conversation, and not all the time think about what we're going through. For me, giving has been a major contributor. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
giving back to others. So giving back to others by spending time with them, primarily, is the main thing, by sharing. Because when we begin to share with others, it takes the focus off ourselves, right? When I share with others, I'm not really thinking about me. I'm thinking about somebody else. And those moments and those times, it gives you a sense of relief, medication to your spirit, because you're not thinking about, man, myself, I'm sick. Because there's other people out there who are sick too. We got people who have been on cancer. I have friends that have lost from cancer. You have people with all kind of adversities that they're dealing with. And so I would even go to cancer runs, and I would volunteer my time and pass out water and T-shirts. So those things will make you feel good about yourself as a human, because you're giving back. So I encourage everybody to go out there, give back, do some encouraging things to give to others. This is a transition, okay? And as we go through this transition, try to take it one day at a time. You know, we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, but try to live the highest quality of life each day in appreciation. Simple things like appreciation, like, hey, we still can walk. I remember being in dialysis where some of the guys that I've known, watching them come back with one leg missing. And
Wow.
that's tough when you've been on a chair for 7 years. So whatever you have, think about what you have, but more than what you don't have. Think
Right.
about what you have. I have my limbs working. I can see, I can hear, I can walk. I still have a place of refuge. I can sleep peacefully. I'm a military veteran. I've known guys who've been in combat. I've known guys who haven't come back home. So my life, what I've experienced, I find every little thing that I have and make that thing a plus. Make what I have a plus and not what I don't have a negative. So count your pluses.
Right.
Sit down and count all your pluses. And with those pluses, hopefully I'll overlook the negatives.
Right. I know it's, time is winding down and you got to get to work, but can you just share with our audience exactly what peak performance does, your business, and also um, define, define living, but
Yeah.
refine living, your life coaching business as well.
So Peak Performance is what I do for a living. It's a fitness facility where I help people get in shape, um, tone, muscle, weight loss, flexibility. And it's always been a dream of mine, always been something that I wanted to do at a very young age. And so I'm constantly, working with people, trying to encourage them and coach them to get fit. And so I always try to endeavor to reach my peak in my life. I always want to be the best. And so that's been a common denominator on how I live. Every day I try to go out and be the best I can possibly be in life, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically. So that's where I got the peak performance from. And throughout the years, as I've been coaching people for over 17 plus years, 20 years, I realized that most of what I do is not a physical thing. It's not primarily physical, it's mental. So when I'm coaching people, I'm actually engaging people from their innermost being. And when I realized that, and then even I realized, even on dialysis, I had to redefine my living. And that's how redefining my living came in. It's saying that, hey, I can't let dialysis define who I am. I can't let kidney disease define who I am. I can't let having a fistula, I can't let all these limitations define who I am. So what I have to do is redefine my living. And I redefine my living by the way I act, behave, the way I treat others, the way I keep my spirit up. And that's what I do with people. I try to continue to encourage them. Doesn't matter what condition you're in, you can redefine your living wherever you are in your journey, wherever you are, what city, whatever state you are. You create you create your environment. You have to be the person who take ownership and define your living. And that's what I try to do with everybody. Is help them redefine your living. We're the greatest coach that we can be to ourselves. And so that's what we have to do. We have to be the greatest cheerleaders sometimes. Sometimes we have to be the best supporters of ourselves. We have to speak to ourselves. I call it positive affirmations that change your mind. And I wake up in the morning with positive affirmations, with prayer. I speak life over me and not death. So speak life every day. Say you can. It's not that you can.
All right. Wow. So Lamont, if anybody wanted to get in contact with you, because I know you post all the time about your newsletter and important tips. So if anyone watching right now wanted to reach out to you so they can get that information, so they can be a part of your group and get these informational tips, how can they reach you?
Well, you can reach me, first of all, you can reach me on Facebook. I'm under LaMonte Reed on Facebook, and that's a good way. You can message me on Facebook also. And then, you can look up my business. My business is Peak Fit Strength and Conditioning. You can look that up, and you can email me through that avenue. But you also can email me through Redefine Living. Redefine Living is my last name, Reed, Define, DEFINE, Living. And so I think Facebook might be the easiest access to people. If they want to, you can get my even my phone number. I coach people over the phone, and so if someone wanted to call me, that's how I do a lot of my coaching. So I'll even give my phone number out there if somebody want to reach me. It's 626-392-7016. Again, it's 626-392-7016. Again, I do coaching like you're doing with people over the phone. So feel free to email me, Facebook me, message me, call me, and I'll be glad to share all the information I have.
Okay, you said 626-392-7016.
70. Yep, that's it.
So I wanted to ask you a question, and it just, oh my God, it left my mind. What, wow, I had a question that slipped my mind. You was giving your number, and I was trying to write that down.
Hmm.
Um, Pertaining to depression. Wow. All right. So if anyone, let me just ask you this, man. I'm kind of stuck because I had what I wanted to ask you. I thought it
Right.
was an important question. I know once this broadcast is over,
It's gonna
it's
pop up.
going to come to me.
Right, right.
But oh, I know what it is. I know what it is. Lamont, you're a life coach, spiritual advisor, public speaker, business owner, and transplant recipient. Did you know when you first got diagnosed with kidney disease that all this was going to evolve into your life?
No, no, no clue. No clue, man. I can't even tell you how this became part of my journey, become a blessing. Um, you know, yeah, I mean, I knew what I wanted to do. Um, I was in the military also, and I had no clue. I knew I wanted to own a gym. I knew that, but I did not know that it would turn out to something like this. And that's the amazing part, that when we begin to just really try to do our best and give back and try to understand what we're going through, a lot of good things can come out of it. Sickness doesn't have to be something that can ruin our lives, that can cause our lives so much tragedy. You can turn your sickness into something positive, and many people do it all the time. So to answer your question, I had no clue. Had no clue, man.
And that's the point. That's the point that I was trying to make. Um, that's the point I was trying to make, Lamont, is that if someone is watching right now and has been diagnosed with kidney disease, it doesn't mean that it's over, that their
No.
life is over by no stretch. So if Lamont can turn it around, and the Renal Warrior and other people, it can be done. And like you say, I guess it would be a mind over matter to a certain degree, right?
I think the mind is very powerful. I think the will and your spiritual belief. I think all those things are components that's very powerful. And if you really have a desire and a passion to do something, I think you should do it no matter what. And if you don't, it's not too late to find out. I coach people to find out what is their purpose. There's still a purpose. It's a purpose in your chronic disease. There's a purpose in your life. And I think what I did find my purpose early on, and my purpose was primarily helping people. I didn't know in what way, I didn't know what avenue, but I knew years ago that when I was younger, I wanted to help people. And so
Right.
if you got a heart for people, there's so many things that can come out from just wanting to help people. So keep that in mind. And these are things I do. I help people to coach them about what is your purpose in life.
All right, man. All right. All right, we were out of time, but Lamont, I definitely appreciate you coming on, taking the time out of your busy schedule, man, to be with us, to share your knowledge, your experience, especially dealing with depression, man. And we wish you all the best in your endeavors and what you do for the Reno community out in California and online as well, brother.
Hey man, I appreciate you having me on the show, man. It was an honor, and keep doing what you're doing too. Keeping that awareness going, and keep speaking on our behalf. We appreciate you, man.
All right, thank you, man. I appreciate that. And I'll be in
All
touch
right,
with you, man. All right, take care.
all right. Have a good night.
All right, you too, bro. Thank
All
you.
right, all right.
All
Bye.
right. So, again, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. I'm just going to stay on for a minute just to give you some updates um, on especially my partner. Please say a prayer for Tamika More, she's on bed rest for the rest of her pregnancy. Very sensitive matter, and we just asking for thoughts and prayer while she's going through this process. Also, I'd like to thank everyone for keeping me in their thoughts and prayers with the death of my ex-wife. We will be burying her October the 27th, 2018 in Riverdale, Maryland, USA. And I'd like to thank everyone for supporting the show. We just like to touch on or many topics, not just certain ones, but many topics that affect chronic kidney disease and the people that are affected by chronic kidney disease, and just try to be straight honest with what's going on from the medical point that we have working in the industry. So we hope to come back with more exciting shows next week. We're going to have Chef Oliver Hale. He's going to talk about his transplant and how he got into cooking and dietary. And then this Sunday, we're going to have Monica Lewis Fox on Sunday Morning Transplant Coffee Talk. So please keep watching. If you'd like to be a guest on any one of these shows, please reach out to us. We are looking for individuals to share their stories with other people who may just got diagnosed with chronic kidney disease and need to see that someone else is going through this as well and that they're not alone. We know tonight's topic, depression and kidney disease, may hit a lot of sensitive areas, but we have to talk about it because people do suffer from depression that deals with kidney disease. And it's no need to be ashamed to talk about what you're feeling, because we believe once you talk about it and you add other interventions in there, maybe some may need medication, maybe people exercise, psychotherapy, anything, but just talk about it and not just stew on it to where it gets to the point where it cripples you and you're not able to do anything about it. We did have the National Suicide Hotline number on. We'll put that number on again. Just give me one moment. So if you're experiencing any of the symptoms that we talked about, please seek help. Talk to someone, talk to a physician, nephrologist, consult with a mental health provider, a family member, spouse, anyone, to just let them know how you're feeling. We can answer. I can answer some questions if you have any. I'm going to put this number back up for the National Suicide Hotline. Let's see. That's 273-8255. So, okay. So, Michelle, okay, I would tell her to send me an email, Miss Kaufman. And Miss June, thank you for being such a great supporter of the show, Urban Renal Talk with Tamika and Steve, and also Sunday Morning Transplant Coffee Talk. We definitely appreciate you and look forward to having you on, hearing your story. Kidney disease affects millions of people from all parts of this planet. I think the way we can kind of hopefully get a grip on it or try to stay in front is to have these type of conversations, see how people like Miss June is dealing with kidney disease and her transplant, and Barb Lundberg, people out California, down in Texas, up north, Midwest. overseas. This disease is affecting a lot of people. So we believe this is a good platform to talk about certain uh, items or topics that happen with kidney disease, especially not just pre-kidney disease, but patient care. We talked last week about infection control, and we're going to have more topics like that, like um, disaster planning. We did not mention, and I'm sorry that we didn't talk about this topic, but the people down in Florida, the kidney warriors in Florida, down that was in the path of Hurricane Michael. It was no mention, or I didn't see any mention of did anyone, get their dialysis or miss dialysis because of the hurricane. Were any units affected down in those coastal areas? So even with disaster planning, that is really starting to really be serious. At one time, we took it as kind of a joke. We went over a little bit with the patients, but now this is getting serious where if they come in and show you how to disconnect yourself from machine, you may have to do that. You may have to stop your blood pump, clamp your lines, disconnect, and walk yourself out of the unit because of some form of natural disaster that may happen. So we're going to have topics like that, what you can do. We're going to have topics about access care, catheter care, hand washing. I mean, it's so much stuff to talk about. And it was one, um, uh, I did a poll. Uh, we did a poll. If you had kidney disease and suffer from depression, did you seek uh, care team methods for treatment, like talk to a social worker or a doctor or just a professional person if you dealt with depression? So we did a poll. 60% of the people who answered that says yes, 40% said no. So, I mean, you got a 20% difference, but you have 40% of people who answered this poll, and it's a small poll. It's not a general population, but the people who answered it on here that dealt with this disease, 40% don't get professional help or seek that, and you have 60% that does. So we got to do better. We know depression is common, 20 to 40% of patients with kidney disease. So if you know that, that's the first battle. You're not alone. There's other people that deal with this, and all we have to do is talk about it, get it out there, get help, do some of the suggestions that Ahmad talked about: spiritual advisement, exercise, rest, family support, group support, talk about it. And some people may need medicinal medication. If that was going to take for those depressive symptoms to be alleviated, then you have to do that. But try to seek getting off the medication. I mean, some people may have to use that for a while, some people don't, but I would think the whole goal is to do this holistically instead of walking around feeling some sort of way, being medicated and kind of zoned out. So, again, thank you for watching. We definitely appreciate your support. We look forward to Sunday morning Transplant Coffee Talk, where we will have Monica Lewis Fox. Next week on Urban Renal Talk, we will have Chef Oliver Hale in the house. Again, thanks for watching. Have a good evening. God bless and peace be with you.